Have you ever wondered why you can feel deeply committed to something one day and completely disconnected from it the next? You promise yourself that tomorrow will be different. You will wake with clarity. You will care for your mind. You will listen to your heart. You will stop returning to the habits that leave you anxious and empty. Yet when tomorrow arrives, the old thoughts return, the familiar emotions take over, and once again you feel as though you have failed yourself. Perhaps the real question is not, why can't I be more consistent? Perhaps the deeper question is, what part of me am I trying to obey? There is a part of you that moves through fear. It believes you must force yourself to change. It tells you that you are behind, that others are stronger, that you should have healed by now, that you should be more disciplined, more peaceful, more certain. This voice often sounds like motivation, but beneath it there is rejection. It is asking you to become someone different because it does not believe the person you are right now is enough. And then there is another presence within you. It does not shout, it does not threaten, it does not compare. It waits quietly beneath the noise. This presence does not ask you to prove your worth through perfect behavior. It simply invites you to return. Maybe consistency is not about never wandering away. Maybe it is about becoming willing to return each time you notice that you have wandered. You may have been taught to think of consistency as a kind of force. You push through resistance. You ignore your emotions. You demand more from yourself. For a while, this may create movement. But pressure is difficult to sustain because it separates you from your own spirit. When every action comes from the belief that something is wrong with you, even the most beautiful practice can begin to feel like punishment. You may begin a morning routine because you are afraid of wasting your life. You may meditate because you believe you should not feel anxious. You may forgive someone because you think spiritual people are not supposed to feel anger. You may care for your body because you are comparing it with someone else's. Outwardly, these choices may appear healthy. Inwardly, they may still be rooted in fear. Fear can make you act, but it cannot give you peace. Love moves differently. Love does not say, change so that you can finally deserve acceptance. Love says, you are already accepted. Let your choices become an expression of that remembrance. Think of a tree standing through the seasons. It does not condemn itself when its leaves fall. It does not look at the tree beside it and decide it has failed because the other tree is blooming. It remains rooted. It trusts the season. It allows rest to be part of growth. Its consistency is not found in always looking the same. Its consistency is found in remaining connected to what gives it life. You also have roots. Beneath your changing moods, your fears, your mistakes, and your uncertain seasons, there is a quiet spiritual center. You may call it your true self, the source, divine presence, or simply the place within you that knows peace. The name matters less than the experience. It is the part of you that has never been damaged by your past. It is the part that does not need applause, approval, or perfection in order to exist fully. When you lose connection with this center, life becomes a struggle of control. You try to manage every outcome. You criticize yourself for every delay. You become frightened that one difficult day will undo all your progress. But when you return to that center, consistency becomes softer. It becomes less about controlling your life and more about living in harmony with it. Imagine waking tomorrow and not beginning the day with accusation. Before checking what needs to be done, you become still for a moment. You breathe, you listen. You ask yourself, what energy do I want to offer this day? Not what you must accomplish, not how much you must prove, only what you wish to bring. Perhaps the answer is patience. Perhaps it is kindness. Perhaps it is courage, forgiveness, or trust. Then one small action becomes enough to express that intention. You do not have to transform your entire life before breakfast. You only have to meet this moment without abandoning yourself. There will still be days when you feel tired. There will be moments when an old fear returns, when you react instead of responding, when you forget the promise you made in the silence. But forgetting does not make you unworthy, it makes you human. Awareness gives you another opportunity to choose. The moment you notice that you have moved away from peace, you are already standing at the doorway of return. This is where a different kind of consistency begins. Not the consistency of punishment, but the consistency of remembrance. Not the pressure to become someone new, but the willingness to come home to who you have always been. And as you begin to see this, another question quietly appears. If your inconsistency is not proof of weakness, what has really been pulling you away from yourself? What has really been pulling you away from yourself is not a lack of strength. It is often the voice of the ego asking you to live from fear instead of presence. The ego is not something you need to fight or destroy. Fighting it only gives it more attention. It is simply the part of the mind that believes your safety depends on control, comparison, approval, and certainty. It watches the world constantly and asks, am I doing enough? Am I falling behind? What will people think? What if I fail again? When these questions guide your choices, consistency becomes exhausting. You are no longer acting from a peaceful intention. You are trying to escape an uncomfortable feeling about yourself. Perhaps you have experienced this when beginning something meaningful. You decide to spend a few quiet minutes each morning in reflection. For several days, you feel calm and connected. Then one morning, you wake late, you reach for your phone, you move quickly into the noise of the day, and the quiet practice disappears. Nothing serious has happened. You simply missed one morning. But the ego rarely leaves it there. It begins creating a story. You always do this. You never follow through. You cannot trust yourself. Within moments, one missed practice becomes evidence against your entire character. The emotional struggle is no longer about the morning. It is about the painful identity you have attached to it. Awareness allows you to see that the missed morning and the story about the missed morning are not the same thing. The event is simple. The story creates the suffering. When you notice this, you can pause. You can recognize that the accusing voice is not the deepest truth about you. It is a learned pattern. Perhaps it came from years of being criticized. Perhaps it grew from comparing yourself with others. Perhaps you learned early that love was given more freely when you performed well, stayed agreeable, or avoided mistakes. The ego often carries old instructions into new moments. It may tell you that consistency means never disappointing anyone. So you say yes when your heart is asking for rest. You keep promises to everyone except yourself. You remain available, pleasant, and dependable, even while resentment quietly grows within you. You may look consistent from the outside, yet inwardly you feel divided. This is the hidden pain of people-pleasing. It appears to be kindness, but it is often fear wearing the clothes of kindness. You are not always giving because love is overflowing. Sometimes you are giving because you are afraid of being rejected. There is no shame in recognizing this. Awareness is not accusation, it is light. When sunlight enters a dark room, it does not condemn the darkness. It simply reveals what was already there. In the same way, your awareness allows you to see the difference between an act of love and an act of fear. You might ask yourself gently, would I still choose this if I were not afraid of losing approval? That question can reveal a great deal. Perhaps you continue a relationship pattern because you fear being alone. Perhaps you stay silent because you fear conflict. Perhaps you abandon your inner practices whenever someone else needs your attention because you believe their comfort is more important than your peace. Each time you leave yourself to secure another person's approval, the ego learns that fear is in charge. But the answer is not to become cold or selfish. The answer is to include yourself within your love. Real love does not require self-abandonment. It allows you to care for others without disappearing. It allows you to say yes without resentment and no without hatred. It allows your daily choices to arise from truth rather than fear. Comparison is another way the ego interrupts your natural rhythm. You may begin walking your own path with sincerity, but then you look to the side. Someone seems more disciplined, more peaceful, more spiritually aware. Their progress appears effortless. Suddenly your small steps feel meaningless. You forget that every soul has its own season. A seed beneath the soil does not compare itself with a flower already in bloom. Its work is invisible, but it is not inactive. In darkness, roots are forming. Strength is developing where no one can see it. Much of your inner transformation happens in this way. There may be no applause. There may be no visible proof. You may still experience anxiety, doubt, and old reactions. Yet something within you is learning to observe instead of obey. Something is becoming less willing to turn fear into identity. This quiet change matters. You do not need to look like someone else's idea of peace. Your path may include pauses, questions, grief, and uncertainty. These are not interruptions to the journey. They are part of the ground through which your awareness grows. The ego also creates attachment to outcomes. It says, I will continue only if I see results. You meditate, but your thoughts remain restless. You practice forgiveness, but the pain returns. You choose patience, but the relationship does not change. You try to trust life, but uncertainty remains. Then you wonder whether your efforts are working. But spiritual consistency is not a transaction with life. You are not offering 10 minutes of stillness in exchange for a problem-free day. You are not choosing love to force another person to change. You choose these things because they bring you into alignment with who you wish to be, regardless of the immediate outcome. Consider a river moving toward the sea. It does not demand that the landscape become straight. It meets stones, bends, fallen branches, and narrow passages. It continues not by forcing its way through everything, but by remaining true to its nature. Sometimes it moves quickly, sometimes it becomes almost still. Yet even in stillness, it has not forgotten where it belongs. You, too, may move through seasons when your outer progress seems slow. Loss may change your energy. Aging may change your body. Uncertainty may make old plans impossible. A relationship may end. A purpose you once felt certain about may no longer feel alive. The ego interprets these changes as failure because it wants life to remain predictable. But life is movement. Every season asks something different from you. Consistency does not mean repeating the same form forever. It means remaining connected to the same inner truth while the form is allowed to change. Perhaps you once found peace through long walks, but now your body asks for gentler movement. Perhaps you once expressed love by fixing everyone's problems, but now love asks you to listen without interfering. Perhaps you once believed your purpose had to be large and visible, but now you are discovering purpose in caring for one person, creating one honest thing, or bringing peace into one room. The form changes. The intention remains. This is why control creates so much suffering. Control insists that life follow the picture in your mind. When reality changes, you tighten your grip, you try harder, you judge yourself. You become afraid that surrender means weakness. Yet surrender does not mean giving up on what matters. It means releasing the demand that it must happen exactly as you imagine. A tree does not control the wind. It deepens its roots. Your roots are your awareness, your breath, your willingness to become still before reacting, your ability to notice fear without turning it into a command. Imagine that someone says something that awakens an old wound in you. Perhaps they criticize you, ignore you, or fail to understand what you were trying to express. The familiar reaction rises immediately. You want to defend yourself, withdraw, or replay the conversation for hours. The ego says, you must resolve this now. You must make them understand. You cannot be at peace until they change their view of you. Awareness offers another possibility. You feel the emotion without denying it. You notice the tightness in your body. You hear the mind creating arguments. But before giving your energy to the reaction, you allow one moment of space. In that space, you may ask, what am I protecting? Perhaps you are protecting an image of always being right. Perhaps you are protecting the need to be seen as good. Perhaps you are afraid that another person's opinion has the power to define you. The moment you see this clearly, the reaction begins to loosen. You may still speak. You may still set a boundary. You may still leave a harmful situation. Spiritual awareness does not ask you to tolerate mistreatment. It simply helps you act without allowing anger, fear, or wounded pride to choose for you. This is how freedom begins, not when difficult emotions disappear, but when they no longer control your direction. Fear will sometimes visit. The need for approval may return. Comparison may appear when you least expect it. Old habits may call you back because they are familiar. You do not need to treat these moments as spiritual failure. The sky does not lose its nature when clouds pass through it. The clouds may be dark, they may remain for hours, but the sky is still present behind them, vast and unchanged. Your thoughts and emotions are like those clouds. They move through awareness, but they are not the whole of who you are. When you remember this, consistency becomes the practice of returning to the sky rather than trying to control every cloud. You begin to notice the ego without hating it. You hear its fearful questions and respond with compassion. I understand that you are trying to protect me, but fear does not need to lead this moment. This gentle response is far more powerful than inner violence. You cannot shame yourself into peace. You cannot compare yourself into wholeness. You cannot control yourself into freedom. You can only become aware of the distance between fear and love, and then choose again. Sometimes that choice will feel clear. Sometimes it will be very small. It may be one honest breath before answering, one moment of silence before reaching for distraction, one decision not to repeat the cruel story you have told about yourself for years. These small returns are not insignificant. They are how a new inner relationship is formed. Each time you return without punishment, you teach yourself that wandering is not the end. Each time you meet fear with awareness, you weaken its authority. Each time you choose love without demanding immediate results, you move closer to your natural state. And gradually, consistency no longer feels like a rigid path you must follow perfectly. It begins to feel like a relationship with the presence within you. A relationship built not on control, but on trust. Not on comparison, but on acceptance. Not on the fear of falling, but on the quiet knowledge that you can always return. And once you realize that the ego's interruptions do not have the power to separate you permanently from your true self, you become ready to explore something even deeper. How forgiveness, surrender, and conscious intention can transform returning into a way of life. Forgiveness, surrender, and conscious intention do not turn you into someone new. They gently remove what has been covering the person you have always been. Perhaps this is why returning to yourself can feel both unfamiliar and deeply familiar at the same time. You may not know exactly how to live without fear guiding you, yet somewhere within peace feels like home. Love feels recognizable. Stillness feels less like something you are learning and more like something you are remembering. But before that remembrance can become a daily way of living, there are often old burdens asking to be released. One of those burdens is the belief that your past inconsistency proves something permanent about you. You remember the promises you made and did not keep. You remember the times you began with sincerity and stopped when life became difficult. You remember the days when you knew what would bring you peace, yet chose what was familiar instead. The ego gathers these memories and presents them as evidence. It says, "This is who you are." You always return to the old pattern. You cannot depend on yourself. Forgiveness offers a different interpretation. It says that every past version of you was acting from the awareness available in that moment. Perhaps you were tired. Perhaps you were frightened. Perhaps you were carrying pain you did not yet understand. Perhaps the habit you now judge was once a way of surviving something you did not know how to face. This does not mean every choice was helpful. It means condemnation is not the only way to understand it. Imagine walking through a garden after a long winter. Some branches are broken. Some areas have become overgrown. A few seeds never grew. You could stand at the gate and criticize the garden for what it failed to become. Or you could kneel beside the soil and begin caring for what is still alive. Forgiveness is that kind of care. You do not forgive yourself by pretending the past did not matter. You forgive yourself by refusing to use the past as a weapon against the present. Perhaps you missed many opportunities to choose peace, but this moment is still here. Perhaps you abandoned yourself many times, but awareness has returned. Perhaps your old patterns have deep roots, but so does the divine presence within you. The past can explain your pain, but it does not need to direct your next step. You might reflect on someone else you have struggled to forgive. Perhaps their actions change the way you trust. Perhaps their words still live inside your mind. You may have tried to let go, only to discover that the hurt returns when you least expect it. Forgiveness in this sense is not an instant emotional achievement. It is not forcing yourself to feel warm towards someone who caused harm. It is the gradual release of the belief that carrying the wound will protect you from being wounded again. Resentment often feels like control. The mind says, if I keep remembering what happened, I will remain safe. But the memory becomes a room you continue living in long after the other person has left. To forgive is to open a window. You may still remember. You may still maintain distance. You may still honor the lesson and protect your boundaries. But you begin allowing fresh air into the inner space where pain has been repeating itself. And each time you release even a small amount of resentment, you recover energy that can now be used for peace. This matters deeply for consistency because inner conflict consumes enormous energy. When you are fighting the past, replaying old conversations, and trying to prove that your pain was justified, there is little space left for conscious intention. You wake already carrying yesterday, but your true self lives only in the present. The source within you does not ask you to repair every past moment before you are allowed to begin again. It meets you now. It is available in this breath, this pause, this quiet recognition that you no longer wish to live through the same fear. This is where surrender begins. Surrender is often misunderstood as passivity. You may imagine that letting go means you stop caring, stop choosing, or stop participating in your life. But spiritual surrender is not the absence of intention. It is the release of resistance. You still plant the seed. You still water the soil. You still offer your attention and care. But you stop pulling at the earth each morning to see whether the seed has grown. You allow life to participate. There may be something you have been trying to force, a relationship you want to heal, a purpose you want to discover, a fear you want to remove, a future you want to guarantee. You may have believed that if you thought about it enough, planned carefully enough, or controlled yourself completely enough, uncertainty would disappear. But uncertainty is not a mistake in life, it is part of life. A river does not know every turn before it reaches the sea. It meets each curve as it arrives. Its trust is not based on having a map. Its trust is expressed through movement. You are invited into the same kind of trust. You do not need to know whether every effort will produce the result you imagine. You only need to become honest about the energy from which you are acting. Are you choosing from fear, or are you choosing from love? Are you trying to control how you will be seen, or are you expressing what feels true? Are you demanding certainty, or are you willing to take one peaceful step without knowing the entire path? Conscious intention begins with these quiet questions. An intention is not a demand made to the universe. It is an inner direction. It is the quality of energy you decide to embody before the outer world gives you permission. You may set the intention to bring patience into a difficult relationship. This does not mean the other person will immediately understand you. It means you will try not to abandon your own peace while speaking with them. You may set the intention to live with greater trust. This does not mean every uncertainty will vanish. It means you will notice when fear begins, predicting disaster, and gently return to the present. You may set the intention to care for yourself with love. This does not mean you will never fall into an old habit. It means you will no longer use that habit as evidence that you are unworthy of care. Intention gives consistency a soul. Without intention, repetition can become empty. You may perform the same practice every day while remaining disconnected from its meaning. But when you remember why you are returning, even a small action becomes sacred. 1 minute of sincere stillness can carry more truth than an hour of forced meditation. One honest apology can carry more healing than weeks of trying to appear spiritual. One act of self-forgiveness can begin changing a pattern that punishment has never been able to change. Consider someone who has spent years caring for others. They have become known as dependable, generous, and strong. Yet inwardly, they are exhausted. They rarely ask what they need. They feel guilty when resting. Each time they try to create space for themselves, another person's request appears, and the old pattern returns. Their inconsistency is not laziness. It is an old agreement. I am worthy when I am useful. To return to the true self, this agreement must be seen with compassion. Perhaps this person begins with 5 quiet minutes each morning, not as a productivity ritual, not as another task to complete, but as an act of remembrance. In that silence, they ask, can I allow myself to exist without earning this moment? At first, discomfort may arise. The mind may list responsibilities. Guilt may appear, but they remain for one more breath. Over time, those 5 minutes become a place where the old agreement loses its power. They begin to understand that rest is not abandonment. A boundary is not rejection. Receiving is not selfishness. Their outer life may not change all at once, but their inner relationship changes. They are no longer trying to become worthy through constant giving. They are learning to give from worthiness already remembered. This is how spiritual transformation often happens. Quietly, beneath visible behavior, in the space where identity begins to shift. You stop saying, I must become consistent so I can respect myself. You begin saying, because there is something sacred within me, I will return with respect. The difference is subtle, but it changes everything. The first statement begins with deficiency. The second begins with wholeness. When you begin from wholeness, mistakes lose their power to define you. A difficult day becomes a difficult day, not a verdict. A pause becomes a pause, not the end of the journey. You no longer need to create dramatic promises after every setback because your return can be simple. You breathe. You notice. You forgive. You choose again. This gentle rhythm may seem too small to transform a life. The ego often prefers dramatic change because drama gives it something to measure. But nature rarely rushes its deepest work. Dawn arrives gradually. A tree grows silently. The ocean shapes stone through patient return. Your inner life may be changing in the same way. Each time you choose awareness over reaction, something is reshaped. Each time you release self-condemnation, the heart becomes more open. Each time you trust the next step without demanding the entire future, fear becomes less convincing. You may not notice the change immediately, then one day, a familiar situation arises and you respond differently. Someone disappoints you, and instead of carrying the pain for days, you allow yourself to feel it and let it pass. You miss a practice, and instead of disappearing into shame, you return the next morning. You face uncertainty, and although fear is present, it no longer makes every decision. This is not perfection, it is alignment. Alignment means your choices are increasingly reflecting the peace you know exists within you. It does not mean you never feel anger, grief, doubt, or confusion. It means you stop treating those emotions as authorities. You allow them to move through you like weather while remaining connected to the deeper sky. Love becomes important here because love is the energy that makes returning possible. Fear says, no, return because you are failing. Love says, return because you belong here. Fear says, do not make another mistake. Love says, even if you wander, the door remains open. Fear says, prove that you have changed. Love says, let change grow naturally from awareness. When love becomes the foundation of your daily choices, consistency no longer feels like surveillance. You are not watching yourself for signs of failure. You are listening for opportunities to reconnect. Perhaps you place your hand over your heart before beginning the day. Perhaps you sit beside a window and watch the light change. Perhaps you walk without your phone and allow silence to accompany you. These moments are not magical because of their form. They are meaningful because they remind you that your life is more than the noise passing through your mind. The practice itself is not the destination, it is a doorway. Stillness leads you back to awareness. Gratitude leads you back to presence. Forgiveness leads you back to freedom. Trust leads you back to the flow of life. Love leads you back to yourself. And perhaps the deepest surrender is realizing that you do not have to carry your life alone. The same intelligence that opens a flower, moves the seasons, and guides the river toward the sea is present within you. You may not always understand its direction. You may not receive the answer when you expect it, but you can become quiet enough to sense that life is not merely happening against you. Something is also moving through you. When you live in harmony with that presence, consistency becomes less about holding everything together and more about staying available. Available to guidance, available to truth, available to begin again. And as forgiveness softens the past, surrender loosens your grip on the future, and intention brings you fully into the present. You begin to discover that being consistent every day is not a rigid promise about what you will always do. It is a quiet promise about where you will return. And so the question is no longer whether you can perform perfectly every day. The question becomes whether you can remain willing to return. Return when fear has carried you into imagined futures. Return when resentment has pulled you back into the past. Return when comparison has convinced you that your path is too slow. Return when you have forgotten your intention and spent the day reacting to everything around you. Returning is not a sign that you failed. Returning is the practice itself. You may begin each morning with a few moments of stillness, not because silence will remove every difficulty, but because it helps you remember that you are more than the thoughts waiting to claim your attention. Before the demands of the world enter, you can sit quietly and notice your breath. You can allow yourself to exist without fixing anything. In that stillness, you might ask, what do I wish to bring into this day? The answer does not need to be complicated. Perhaps you wish to bring patience, perhaps gentleness, perhaps honesty, courage, forgiveness, or trust. Let that quality become your intention and allow your choices to grow from it. As the day moves forward, awareness can become your quiet companion. You may notice tension while speaking with someone. You may feel the old need to please, defend, or withdraw. Rather than judging the reaction, simply recognize it. Awareness creates a small space between what you feel and what you choose. Within that space, you are free. You may not always choose perfectly. There will be moments when the old pattern moves faster than your awareness. When this happens, forgiveness becomes the way home. Instead of speaking to yourself with cruelty, you can acknowledge what happened and begin again. Perhaps you say inwardly, I lost my center for a moment, but I do not have to remain lost. This simple act of self-forgiveness protects your energy from shame. It allows one difficult moment to remain one moment instead of becoming the story of an entire day. Gratitude can also help you return. Not forced gratitude that denies pain, but honest gratitude for what remains present even in uncertainty. A breath moving through your body, light entering a room, a person who listens, a lesson hidden inside disappointment, the awareness that you still have another opportunity to choose love. Gratitude does not mean everything is easy. It means difficulty is not the whole of life. At the end of the day, you may take a few quiet moments to reflect. Not to create a report of everything you did wrong, but to notice where you felt aligned and where you became disconnected. You might ask, when did I feel most like myself today? Perhaps it was when you listened without trying to fix someone. Perhaps it was when you rested without guilt. Perhaps it was when you chose not to repeat an angry thought. Perhaps it was simply the moment you paused and breathed before responding. These moments reveal your true direction. You may also ask, what am I ready to release before sleep? A conversation you cannot change, an expectation that was not met, a mistake you made, a fear about tomorrow. Let the day end without carrying every unfinished thought into the night. The sun does not apologize for setting. It trusts that another morning will come. You can offer yourself the same trust. Consistency will not always look impressive. Some days it may be a long period of reflection. Other days it may be one conscious breath. Some days you may feel deeply connected to the source within you. Other days the connection may seem distant, but the presence has not left. The ocean does not cease to exist because you can no longer hear it from where you stand. The sky does not disappear when it is covered by clouds. In the same way, your true self remains beneath every temporary state. You are not trying to create this self, you are learning to remember it. And perhaps this is the deepest meaning of being consistent every day. It is not repeating the same action with mechanical perfection. It is becoming faithful to the inner place where peace, love, and awareness already live. You return to stillness. You return to gratitude. You return to forgiveness. You return to trust. You return to love. And whenever you forget, you return again. There is no final day on which you become so spiritually complete that you never wander. Life will continue to offer change, uncertainty, loss, beauty, relationships, and new seasons. But you can meet these experiences with less fear because you know the way home. The doorway is always present. It is found in the breath you are taking now. It is found in the moment you stop arguing with what has already happened. It is found in the decision to release the person you believed you had to become and honor the peaceful presence you already are. Let your consistency be gentle. Let it breathe. Let it change form as your life changes. Do not measure it by how rarely you struggle. Measure it by how lovingly you return. And when you look back, you may discover that the life you wanted to change was not transformed through pressure at all. It was transformed through thousands of quiet moments in which you remembered who you truly were. If this journey has brought something into your awareness, share your reflection in the comments. Your words may help someone else feel less alone on their own path. And subscribe for more quiet spiritual journeys into peace, healing, and the wisdom that has always lived within you. You do not need to force the river toward the sea. You only need to stop resisting its flow. Return to the source within you, one peaceful moment at a time, and let that return become the rhythm of your life.